Hey, what's happening, everybody? Brent Axe here from syracuse.com, and we are live here on the Syracuse Orange Football Facebook page right off the heels of a heartbreaking loss for the Syracuse Football Orange. A competitive day in Death Valley, perhaps a statement made by Syracuse football in the long term, but in the short term, Syracuse lets an upset for the second straight season slip through its fingers. This would have been 2 straight years that Syracuse would have beaten a top 5 Clemson Tigers team. They did it a year ago in the Carrier Dome, as we all remember, but just couldn't get it done in Death Valley today. A 27-23 loss for the Orange. We are here live thanks to our friends at Krause Health. You guys get in there, get those comments going. Please comment respectfully. I know a lot of you are fired up right now, a little emotional about this one, but let's talk respectfully there. I'm going to say that right off the bat because I know you guys are a little fired up here. But certainly I welcome your opinions on this game. We'll jump in there and answer your comments here shortly. And I think you got to have a mix of emotions right now if you're a Syracuse football fan. On one hand, they let one go. They had a lead for a long time against the Clemson Tigers. Everything you needed to go your way went your way. For the second straight season, Syracuse knocked the starting quarterback out of the game. Last year it was Kelly Bryant. This year, Trevor Lawrence, who was named the starting quarterback this week by Dabo Swinney, in place of Kelly Bryant, gets knocked out in the first half of this game. So you never want to see a quarterback get injured or get knocked out of the game, but that's the nightmare scenario there for Clemson because Lawrence was the only guy. Chase Bryce was an unproven freshman, a highly recruited freshman as well, but Trevor Lawrence is the highest recruited kid in the country, not only at his position, but overall. So you knock the quarterback out. You've taken the crowd out of it. You are converting when you need to, getting points on the board. We'll discuss this here as we go. Maybe not enough touchdowns for the Orange, but you've proven you can move the ball and at least get some points on the board against this vaunted Clemson defense. And you are showing up in Death Valley. It's one thing to do it in the Carrier Dome. It's quite another to do it in one of the toughest places to play in college football. And it comes down to the fourth quarter. It comes down to Travis Etienne for Clemson, just gashing the Syracuse defense. As we look at the stats here, Clemson overall today had 293 yards on the ground, whereas Syracuse just 61 yards on the ground today. And it was Travis Etienne all day. 203 yards on the ground, 27 attempts. He really stepped up in the second half, knowing that Trevor Lawrence was out, knowing that Chase Bryce kind of had to hold water, and they weren't going to ask him to do a lot, though he made a lot of great plays down the stretch for Clemson in this game. So they rely on their running game, and the Syracuse offense just couldn't stay on the field. They needed to give that defense a break. That defense played its heart out throughout the day. I think there's some time management issues that I'm sure many of you are going to discuss here in the comments, and that is fair to do, given that, I don't understand why Dino Babers and Brian Ward kept that a timeout, 2 timeouts, how many timeouts you want to discuss. There's no reason to keep that timeout in your pocket. They needed to call timeout. They needed to stall that Clemson offense, which was gashing the defense. They were clearly tired. They were clearly in need of just getting their heads right, figuring out the best way to make that play, that one last play to hold on and keep Clemson out of the end zone. I mean, it's one thing if Clemson goes down and kicks a field goal, you go into overtime, you take your chances. At least now your offense is a factor there. I think that's something that Dino and Brian Ward are going to regret, putting it all on their defense to stop Clemson and, taking away the opportunity for your offense to come out in overtime if that's how this game went and having an opportunity to make a difference here. But again, I think there's fault on the offense there and just, first of all, you got an ineligible man downfield penalty, on Cody Conway, which he was right on the line. You can't be more than 4 yards up the field on a play like that. He was right on the cut line. You can make the case that the ref maybe shouldn't have called that, but they did. And that takes away a brilliant 4th-and-1 call. Syracuse had a couple of big 4th-down calls today. You got to give Dino Babers credit for that. He's somebody who goes for it on 4th down a lot as it is. A 4th and goal, they go for it. Dungy pushes his way in. A 4th down and 1, they go for it. Penalty wipes that away with the ineligible man downfield. You had a situation with about 6 minutes to go. Kendall Coleman makes a terrific play. Clemson actually has to give the ball back to the Syracuse offense. Syracuse has the lead at this point and has to burn some clock. They have to burn some clock by being who they are, maybe not going as fast as you usually do. You don't want to run plays with 6 minutes to go and a 3-point lead on Clemson with 25 seconds left on the game clock. That's bad clock management by Dino Babers and by Mike Lynch and by that coaching staff. You can't do that. Clemson has momentum. The crowd's back in the game, and they are running the football well, which means they're burning clock on the offensive side. So I think that's got to be frustrating if you're a Syracuse fan. On the other hand, they went to Death Valley, the number 3 team in the country, and they proved once again that they're on their level. Syracuse isn't quite back, if you will, as a program, but they're about as close to it as they can get. I think Syracuse is going to pick up a considerable number of AP votes. I'm certainly considering giving them my AP vote, even in a loss. And I can tell you, in 6 years as an AP voter, I've never voted a team into the poll off a loss. But I'm seriously considering it for Syracuse. I got to see how the rest of the day plays out. I don't put anything in ink right now because we got a whole day of college football left, and there are other teams in the poll that deserve my consideration. But Syracuse is picking up a lot of attention, a lot of respect. And let's look at the ACC. Syracuse almost turned the ACC completely on its head today. The ACC is already, it kind of reminds me of Bill Murray and Ghostbusters, right? Dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. Had Syracuse beaten Clemson, it just completely turns on its head. The Titanic sinks, and it's chaos because now Syracuse is in the driver's seat to be the team in the Atlantic Division in the ACC championship game. Think about that for a second. So they're 4-1. They're not 5-0, but there are things happening here. I think Syracuse fans are looking at this program and saying, I'm seeing a lot of messages on Twitter, a lot of messages elsewhere. Fans are like, hey, lock up Dino, re-sign Dino, make sure you've got this guy around here and get a commitment from him because there's going to be other coaching staffs, other universities and athletic directors out there that are going to notice what's happening here at Syracuse. That's something long-term we can discuss. It's certainly something John Wildhack is going to have to think about. But that's what today was. It's a mix of emotions. You have every right to be frustrated in the short term about play calls, clock management, having this team on the ropes, having everything you need to go for it pretty much happen, and letting a win like this slip through your fingers. On the other hand, the fact that, a lot of people were coming away from this saying, hey, just cover the point spread. And Syracuse was a 25-point underdog in this game. So they did that, but they also held firm with the team. This is Clemson. This is a team that has been in the national championship game for 3 straight years. This is a team that has been the class of the ACC clearly for the past few years. This is a program that is not quite Alabama yet, but they're as close to being consistent as Alabama and getting top-rated recruiting classes, Trevor Lawrence being the latest example of that, of an impact player coming in. And we've seen at Alabama the difference that Tua makes, having a legit quarterback with a big arm. So Clemson is right up there. And the fact that Syracuse can say they beat them a year ago and was right on the brink of doing it again this year, that is a major statement for Syracuse football. So let's not let that get lost in the shuffle here. But still, right there, man. You got to feel like they were right there. So we mentioned some stats. I want to give you a couple stats on the Syracuse side of things. They had 311 total yards to Clemson's 469 total yards today. We mentioned the rushing game. Syracuse, much more in the passing game, as you would expect when Trevor Lawrence went down, 250 yards to 176 yards for Clemson. Syracuse really struggled on third down today. We mentioned time management. We mentioned the offense having some issues. One of their big issues today, 3 of 15 on third down. They made a huge third down conversion in the second half that kind of kept things going and kept the potential of an upset in the conversation. But you can't go 3 of 15 overall against a team like Clemson, particularly when they go 5 of 15 on third down. And your defense was, for the most part, the Syracuse defense was great today. Kendall Coleman, Chris Slayton, Alton Robinson didn't have as big of a day as he's had in the prior 2 games where he had, I think, 6 sacks in 2 games against UConn and Florida State. But that defensive line got to Trevor Lawrence before he was knocked out of the game. And it was Evan Foster, a Syracuse safety. Clean hit, by the way, on the sideline. It was not – he did hit him in the helmet, but he at that point, he's not a defensive player. He's a runner, so he's kind of open to what was not a dirty hit at all. It was just a tackle. It was just a play on the sideline. They took away Trevor Lawrence's helmet for concussion protocol, I would imagine, and he didn't come back in the rest of the game. So the Syracuse defense was physical. They got a turnover. Special teams, again today, Andre Schmidt hitting the field goals. They got the Clemson dropped the punt. Syracuse recovered on the 10-yard line, and they cashed that in. You can't ask the special teams to do much more than that in that situation. So you got contributions from all three phases today. But it's the little things like this that add up, and going 3 of 15 on third down certainly did not help Syracuse's cause. Eric Dungy was 26 of 41 for 250 yards today. Syracuse didn't get much from the running game, as we mentioned. Sean Riley was actually their leading rusher with 24 yards on a couple carries. But Mo Neal, who I think was a little banged up in the second half, they really went away from him in the second half of this game. I did not see Dino's press conference before coming on here. Maybe he addressed that in the presser, but certainly, he had 100 yards last week. Certainly nowhere near the bell cow he has been as of late. Jarvian Howard came in and got a carry, but not much from the Syracuse running game today. Dante Strickland, 3 carries for 2 yards as well. Jamal Custis stepped up today. 5 catches, 73 yards. Devin Butler at 5 catches for 45 yards today. You needed a number one guy. You needed a top target. And Jamal Custis not only made some big catches on offense, he made that play on special teams. He drove into that Clemson player who dropped the punt and gave Syracuse, golden field position at the 10-yard line there. So you needed your number one guy to step up there, and he absolutely did on the offensive side. So there's some numbers, some trends, some things to think about. Let's see what you guys are saying here in the comments. Greg saying Syracuse couldn't stop the run. That was certainly the case in the fourth quarter, and they were gassed. That's why you need to call timeout. That's why you need your offense to help you. I think that defense did what they needed to do through 3.5 quarters. Not to say they can't step up and do what they need to do in the fourth quarter, because they need to. There's no question about that. But, you got Travis Etienne is a really good running back. Let's not keep let's keep that in mind. Let's not brush that off here. I mean, I think he's one of the better running backs in the ACC when he's rolling. I think Clemson, drastically underuses him in other situations and other games, but they had no choice today. When you got Chase Bryce coming in for Trevor Lawrence, you lean on your bell cow, and he responded today. Over 200 yards, a career high for Travis Etienne. Rob says, good effort by Syracuse. I don't want to discredit that, but they were up by 10 points in the fourth quarter and lost. It's hard to go too crazy with any moral victory talk, though. I credit Clemson for being a good and physical football team who stepped up in the second half, and they found a way to win. It's not just finding a way to win. It's leaning on your talent. It's leaning on your speed. It's leaning on the guys that got you there. I mean, they were shell-shocked for a while. You lose your quarterback, and you're making adjustments. You're trying to figure out what to do in that situation, and they finally kind of got it going and said, look, we've got a great running back. Let's lean on him. And, this is where your linebackers come in. Syracuse has had a lot of trouble with their linebackers. That is a weakness that's been hidden by the great pass rush that they've had. It's a weakness that's been hidden by the opponents that you've played, and it's a weakness that's been hidden by the offense with the ability to score points. When Travis Etienne's getting in that second level and getting by that defensive line, you need your linebackers to step up, and I think they were kind of exposed today by that Clemson speed, which honestly I anticipated. Speed kills, particularly in that situation, and those linebackers still have a lot to learn and a lot to figure out as we go here. I saw a comment as I'm just kind of scrolling through what you guys are saying here. Listen, the good news here is no one on the schedule from here on out is unbeatable, intimidating, whatever word you want to use. You just took the number 3 team in the country to the brink at home after beating them a year ago. You've got a very manageable schedule from here on out. Pittsburgh is next. Then Syracuse gets a bye. I think it's a bye they need, by the way. No pun intended. Then you get North Carolina and NC State back-to-back at home. North Carolina's a mess. And as a team Syracuse should beat, NC State will not be an easy win. Ryan Finley's one of the better quarterbacks, not only in the ACC, I think in the country this year. So you got to use that pass rush and get to him. But that's a team that Syracuse can beat. There's no one in the ACC left that makes me say, oh, wow, no way. Even Notre Dame at Yankee Stadium. I'm sorry, that's a Syracuse-friendly environment. There'll be a lot of Syracuse and Notre Dame fans in that stadium. Let's not get it wrong. Come November 17th, and we're looking way ahead now. You got to think about health and all kinds of things going on there. But Boston College doesn't look as overwhelming as they did in the first 3 weeks of the season. A.J. Dillon's a great running back, but who knows what his status is going to be at the end of the season. That's the good news that comes out of this. Yeah, you're 4-1. You let one slip against the number 3 team in the country. It would have been a major, major win, not just for this season, but overall for Syracuse football. But they're still set up to have one heck of a season here in an ACC that is as wide open since Syracuse joined it. This is the most I've seen opportunity for Syracuse in the ACC since they joined it 5 years ago. And see, that's what really stings about today. You got a win over Clemson in your back pocket, and you're in the driver's seat for the Atlantic Division title and a spot in the ACC championship game. How huge would that be for Syracuse? But, we'll see how that goes the rest of the way. They probably don't have an opportunity for that now. But, hey, if Trevor Lawrence doesn't come back and Clemson, gets in a couple more dogfights like this, they barely beat Texas A&M with the Aggies losing by 2 there. Maybe Clemson's not quite the overwhelming force we think they are this year. They're still really good. They're still a top 5 team. They're still a team that could be in the college football playoff. Let's not blow that off here. That's still a great defensive line, and they still have some of the best talent in the country. But the fact that Syracuse has played this team 2 years in a row and hasn't backed down — I got that Tom Petty song in my head, I won't back down — you got to give them credit for that. Michael Foster says defensive coordinator is awful. It's been 3 years of this. I don't know what you put on Brian Ward here. They just got pushed around. They were gassed. The offense didn't help them out there. I don't know what calls you make to stop that. I mentioned Travis Etienne is a great running back. I think he just got into what we know is a weakness. We know the Syracuse linebackers are a weakness. I've been as critical of Brian Ward as anybody. I think you're falling back on old habits. I think you're falling back on lazy takes there. You cannot put this game on Brian Ward. I do not agree with that at all. This is a head coach thing. This is a Dino Babers thing. Timeouts, clock management, who knows? Brian Ward may have been in his head telling him, timeout, my guys need a timeout, but it's ultimately Dino that's got to make that call. Jermaine saying, this game made me and a lot of others cry, but we fought with heat. I think they need to understand until that clock hits 0, there's a ball game to be played. There you go. Nice to see that receivers step up. Dare I say 9 wins are possible. Ronnie, 9 wins are absolutely possible. And that's kind of funny to say. This is a new world we're stepping into with Syracuse football this year. So it is possible. It's certainly possible. 4-1, you've got 7 to go now. A lot of people would have been happy just with 6-6 in a bowl game, right? But I don't know, man. If the problem with a game like this, it's a good problem to have, but the problem is you've kind of shown me what you are. You've shown me you're a good football team. You've shown me you're potentially a top 25 football team. So if I believe that, if it holds serve, if you stay healthy, a lot of big ifs here, 6-6 in a bowl game, that might be below what you are. You might be punching down at that point. Absolutely possible, though. Amber saying loving the improvement this year. Look, anybody that is watching this team has seen that. There's clear improvement. There's clear improvement in recruiting. There's clear improvement in a number of things. But Joe also makes a great point here saying, I'm not here for moral victories. Stop peeking around the corner and make the turn already. They're right there to do it. This win, get out your rubber stamp and declare Syracuse football back. But I don't think anybody can disagree that this program is heading in the right direction. If you don't think Syracuse football is heading in the right direction, big picture, by and large, given what we've seen here, I don't know what to tell you. I really don't, because you don't beat Clemson one year and then consistently in the next go on the brink of doing it again and beat Florida State. I know they're down. I know that they're not the Florida State that we knew in the past, but it's still a name brand win. Virginia Tech the year before that, competitive with LSU, Miami last year. And let's bring it up. The defense has collapsed the last 2 years. That cannot happen again. Then the Brian Ward criticisms that we were talking about can come right back. Okay, but if you don't agree by and large, this is just being a neutral observer that's just watching, you drop in off Mars and I say, can you analyze this, please, for the last 3 years? Well, they look like they're kind of going in the right direction. Joe makes a great point to say, come on, you got to turn that corner. You got to win these kind of games. You do. But we're having this conversation. Where in the past, we were having conversations about what coach we're going to go hire again. I think Syracuse fans were there to have this conversation right now, right? Melanie saying, I believe in this team. Matt saying the offense struggled in the second half. I think they need to play DeVito when Dungy can't get the offense rolling. Go with the hot hand. Not in this case, though. How is DeVito the hot hand if he's coming in cold in the second half? Not only that, he's coming against that Clemson defensive line, one of the best defensive lines ever assembled in college football. I don't think you do that. I don't think you change quarterbacks back and forth during a game. I get what you're saying there. DeVito's had enough time generally this year, but I don't think today was much of a Dungy problem. I think it was more of a play calling problem. There were times when they were not going at their rapid pace when they needed to. I think in the fourth quarter, you can't be running plays with 25 seconds left on the game clock. You got to adjust there. But there were times throughout the game where they're being a little too conservative. And you don't beat Clemson being conservative. You got to take shots. You got to go for it. And I think that kind of eased itself a little bit more throughout the game. They got no help from their running game today and still held a lead for most of this football game. This was the first time all season, by the way, Syracuse, trailed in a game. And I get who the opponents are that they played, but they had not trailed until Clemson took a 7-6 lead. To not have your first, situation where you're trailing in a game till 5 games in the season, that's pretty impressive. Let's see. You guys are rolling in the comments today. I love it. Appreciate you being here today on this. Depending on where you are, it's a gorgeous Saturday afternoon here in central New York. Mary Ellen saying Dino needs another good year to move on. Thomas saying Etienne ran all over us, needed to stop the run. Joe saying, I agree. DeVito's a much better passer than – I love this. Mr. Sun's out, guns out. Yeah, Dungy's got those guns, man. That's for sure. But against Clemson, you really think – so you guys are saying do what Dabo Swinney did. Put Trevor Lawrence in over the established guy, the senior leader, the guy that, there's a lot of people in the locker room that like DeVito, by the way. But I don't see anything Eric Dungy did today in particular to say, okay, you're done. We're putting the kid in there. I think it's a little bit of a different situation. But here's the thing. Look all over college football. Clemson, Bama, Notre Dame, Georgia's got 2 quarterbacks. You go up and down some of the best teams in the country, they're making quarterback switches right now. So you're not crazy to suggest that. And we've got this, new – it's almost like a trade deadline in college football with the redshirt rule. So if you haven't played in 4 games, you could transfer. And certainly Kelly Bryant's going to do that. By the way, what's Kelly Bryant thinking today? Seeing Trevor Lawrence go down, seeing that Clemson offense struggle for the most part, but make the plays they had to. It was the running game that got him going there. But Kelly Bryant's still enrolled in school. He could have pulled like a college football version of Willis Reed and ran out there in the second half. Or like when Ace Ventura went and found Dan Marino for the second half of that game, right? He could have run out there, and I don't think he could have played in this game. I'm not familiar with, eligibility and all that stuff. But had that been an option, had that been an opportunity, what a story it would have been. But what's he thinking today? Okay, you want to bench me and go with the kid? Well, look what happened to you. By the way, I think Dabo made this move with Alabama in mind, not Syracuse. I think he's thinking, if I can get my freshman who's got to look, Trevor Lawrence can throw the football, okay? He is Uncle Rico. He can throw the ball over them mountains. You need that kind of quarterback to go tit for tat with Alabama now that Tua is the guy. Make no mistake, I think Dabo had the long term in mind because you got to make the decision by the 4th week to give Kelly Bryant the chance to transfer. Trevor Lawrence was obviously the better quarterback on the field, which is saying a lot given what Kelly Bryant's accomplished here. But in as much as coaches give you this 1 week at a time stuff, they got the big picture in mind too. I think he was thinking about Alabama, and they're 5-0 and have every opportunity to get back there now because they managed to get by Syracuse today. Let's see. Tom saying special teams and receivers stepped up big today. Crucial turnovers, great kicking game, lots of difficult passes caught. Look, there were some situations where the Syracuse offense had to get touchdowns. This is why, look, it's a 4th quarter game as we found out today. But when you've got 2 early possessions in Clemson territory in the red zone, you got to get 6. I think not having Ravian Pierce really hurt Syracuse today because there's that like a 3rd and 9. You can run play action, a 2nd and 10. You can run play action in the red zone. He is that outlet that they needed today because your running game wasn't working. I think they really, really missed him today. And, he's out. We don't know exactly how long, but it certainly looks like the next few weeks at the very least there. So the offense certainly had their opportunities today. Can't get field goals, and expect to beat Clemson. And lo and behold, look what happened. Clemson came back and did it today. Brian saying beat Clemson and then they get ranked. A loss to Clemson, they don't get ranked. We'll see. I hate to sound like my mother used to say that to me all the time when I would ask her for something like a new toy or can I go to the mall with my friends or something. We'll see isn't no, right? Like there was hope there, like, you didn't say no, right? I generally don't vote teams in off a loss, but let's say at the bottom of the poll, there's a few teams that lose there, and I'm looking for teams, and Syracuse has just as strong a resume as anybody. They could get in, but it's now you have lost the ability to completely control your fate to get in the poll. You win, you're absolutely in. You lose, you're depending on like A, B, C, D, and E to happen now. It's kind of out of your hands. Let's see. Charles saying Dungy has an it quality that Baker Mayfield has. Jason saying 4th and 6, make a stop and they win. A great throw by Bryce on that play. And they were running the ball throughout, but he had to make a throw. They had a penalty there that really could have held him back, but they came through. They converted when they really needed to. Joe noting that at the end of the day, it's one game, a better loss for Syracuse than it was a win for Clemson. That's a good way to put it, actually. That is a good way to put it. I think that's a good note to end on, too, here. But, it'll sting. Dino's got to answer some questions about time management in fourth quarter and maybe being overwhelmed by the moment a little bit. But you had the number 3 team in the country on the brink in Death Valley. It's one thing to do it at home when you knock out their starting quarterback. It's quite another to do it in Death Valley. Nonetheless, though, a loss for Syracuse today. Appreciate you hanging out here on Facebook Live. Look for all of our coverage on syracuse.com, including my recap to come. Look for Orange Weekly. It's our new video series. Nate Mink and I talk Syracuse football. It's a quick watch, usually only about 6 or 7 minutes, where we preview the upcoming Syracuse matchup. So next week we'll preview Pitt. You hear from Dino Babers and players. Nate and I give you a little insight and some predictions, and it goes up every Thursday on syracuse.com, so I hope you can look for that. In the meantime, thanks for hanging out with us today. Thanks to our friends from Krause Health for sponsoring our Facebook Live here today. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll be right back here next Saturday. It's another noonish kickoff. Just a few minutes later, it's a 12:20 kickoff against Pitt. And as soon as that game is over, and as soon as Dino Babers is done addressing the media, we'll be right back here on Facebook Live, presented by Krause Health. Thanks for hanging out with us today, everybody. Syracuse losing to Clemson 27-23. We'll catch you next time.